Matt Canavan, what's been your reaction to the protests as we've seen them unfold? Hopefully, we're hoping that there won't be a second wave outbreak, but quite clearly the police in Sydney aren't taking any chances tonight. You've seen in that footage that we've just had on air at Town Hall a very heavy police build-up as we speak.
Well, it's unfortunately, Kieran, late, but later is better than never. It should have been the response last week. I've got this radical, crazy view that people who break the law should be fined or should pay the penalty for breaking the law. And the laws are pretty clear. You can't congregate in these sort of numbers. Thankfully, the courts have upheld those laws this week. And if people do turn out, well, they should suffer the consequences of doing so. We've come so far. We are almost at the finish line. We can get back to normal relatively soon, possibly in this country. And for a small minority of Australians to potentially put all of that at risk in terms of the jobs that will be lost, the businesses that will be hurt, is an incredibly selfish act.
What about in terms of the substance of the issue? Because quite clearly many in the Indigenous community and beyond believe that there are injustices, and obviously the whole closing the gap strategy is about closing the gap of Indigenous disadvantage, and they felt there was a moment in time where they could achieve some attention on that.
Well, there is need for great attention to be turned to those issues. I think, unfortunately, the messages that have come through in the past week have been a little incoherent and unsuited to Australian circumstances. That's probably a consequence of the fact that these protests are linked to or spurred on by incidents that have occurred in the United States, where I think the issues, and I'm no expert on the US, but I think the issues seem very, very different. For example, we've had, I think, some fairly unfortunate attempts to drum up anti-police type sentiments here in Australia, with some cases from years ago that do not bear badly on police. So, for example, the ABC have tried to drum up a case against an unfortunate, very unfortunate, tragic death of an inmate 5 years ago, when the coroner's report clearly cleared police from any wrongdoing, facts that weren't presented by the ABC. And I think it's incredibly dangerous to try and whip up hatred and division in this country, not based on the facts, but based on a relatively amateur attempt to translate American conditions here to Australia. Now, that's not to say the things here in Australia are perfect and all rosy. Absolutely not. There are issues in this country. We do have, unfortunately, too many Indigenous people in prisons, but I don't think that's a consequence of any systemic poor behaviour from police forces. It's because of the systemic breakdown in social and cultural norms within many of our Indigenous communities. And that is a tough issue. It's one we have not solved. It's one we must focus on. But as I say, trying to fit our particular jigsaw puzzle into an American situation is not helpful.